Hello everyone, Jacquie McIntyre here. How are you? I facilitated a session for a young girl recently, and there was a particular concept that came up in it that is really noteworthy. It's worth talking about. She's quite young, in primary school, and has recently formed a really nice connection with somebody else at school. And what that has done is it's almost like really set the imagination on fire. And her imagination and her mind are really spending a lot of time entertaining this vision for how the future could look like. So, I wonder if you can remember back to when you were little and if you ever remember having thoughts of living in a house and having kids, or being with somebody that just loved you so much and you loved them, and all this kind of thing. And when this situation that's going on for her came up as a priority in her session, and I was using her mum as a surrogate for her session, my first initial thought was that maybe this is coming up because her innate wisdom is got an issue with the story that's been told, because it really was this excited and happy, exuberant kind of energy and emotion towards the future and what the future will look like and what we so badly want the future to look like. And what was beautiful is that it just was so clear straight away that her innate wisdom says the image is fine. That's fine. We don't need to do anything about that. It's not that there's anything wrong with the mind being really connected to this image of the future and wanting things to be like that. The issue is when that gets so cemented in that it can't change. That's the issue. So the priority was doing some work within all the levels of the mind so that she can continue to interact with this vision for her future, but it has no edges. There's nothing to come and lock that in so that it keeps playing over and over and over again and says to her, this is what happiness looks like. This is where you're going to find your happiness in the future. Oh my gosh, if only this could happen, if it only could work out this way, this is where you're going to find your happiness. So her innate wisdom is like, no, no boundaries. We do not want this locking in, because we want her to be able to change her idea of happiness whenever she needs to. As she shifts and changes throughout life, her idea of what happiness means to her needs to be flexible. It needs to be adaptable, and she needs to be able to change it according to her values, to what she's going through at that moment, to what is right for her individually at any time, right? And I thought back to all the times that I've ever heard somebody say to me, or in conversation, for the longest time, for years and years and years, I thought happiness was going to look like this and this and this. And when I had this and this and this, that I was going to be happy. And it wasn't until something happened, it wasn't until that happened, or it wasn't until that catastrophe happened, or that crisis happened, or, you know, the bad thing happened, that I realized I don't align with that anymore. That's not what I want anymore. That's not my happiness. So then quite often people will go for years and years and years and years, sometimes their whole life. That first initial projection from the mind of what happiness is going to look for me, sometimes it gets so anchored and so confined and so stuck into place that it stays in place forever. And then you have somebody trying to live up to that vision, even though it's not what is in alignment with them anymore. So when you spend your whole life trying to chase this vision that doesn't even align with you, what do you get? Total unhappiness. Just total and utter unhappiness. Depression, anxiety, relationship breakdown, suicide attempts, self-harm, addiction, behaviors that you know are going to put you in massively harmful, compromising, dangerous situations, behaviors that will put you in, jeopardy with authority and things like that. That's what happens. People become desperately unhappy because it's so rigid. The vision is so rigid that you can't get out of it. So I really loved that formula. I loved that session for this 10-year-old girl because her innate wisdom, imagine being able to get access to this stuff and being able to change this now or put things in place so that she doesn't have to go through that and experience all that misery. I just thought it was such a wonderful thing. So now she's got this capacity to visualize what happiness means for her in the future, but it's got the capacity to change according to her values and what her needs are. And I just thought that was so wonderful. And I wondered whether maybe that was going on for you to some degree at all. Whether you have some aha moment from this where you think, gosh, that sounds like me. That sounds like, when I was a little girl or a little boy, I had this vision of what happiness looks like. And I feel like I've been trying to chase that my whole life. And maybe it gives you pause for thought. And you can just start asking, is it actually what I want now? Is that really my happiness? Because quite often you'll find that it isn't. And the moment you find out or you realize that it isn't your vision of happiness anymore, you are totally free to go and rewrite that whole story. Nothing holding you back. You can go and just start to figure out what actually is your vision of happiness and start to make it happen. Put tiny little things into place right now, every single week, of how you can bring that about or achieve it. And in some cases, it might actually be quite easy to make changes for you, quite significant changes that can bring that vision of happiness into alignment with you quite quickly. So I hope this has been of some help to you. If you have any comments, questions, any feedback, if you want to share any of your own experience, I really, really welcome them, and I'd love to hear how this has helped you as well. I'll talk to you really soon. Bye for now.